Wait. Stop what you're doing right now. What just happened in Major League Baseball is something you are not going to believe. A young pitcher opened his mouth about Shohei Ohtani, and the entire baseball world turned against him. Derek Jeter responded with sarcasm so sharp it became the #1 trending topic nationwide. And Freddie Freeman, fresh off one of the most emotional milestones of his career, had something deeply personal to say about Shohei that nobody expected. This is not just a baseball story. This is a story about respect, legacy, and what happens when you underestimate the greatest player who ever lived. Let's get into it. It started the way these things always start. A young player, full of confidence, decided to share his opinion about Shohei Ohtani. Paul Skeens, the Pittsburgh Pirates' young fireballing pitcher, made comments that sent shockwaves through the league. In an interview, Skeens suggested that Ohtani's two-way status gives him an unfair mental advantage, that pitchers facing him are already psychologically defeated before the first pitch is even thrown. On the surface, it sounds like an observation. But the baseball world heard something else entirely. They heard disrespect. They heard a young man who has played a fraction of the games Ohtani has played, thrown a fraction of the innings, survived a fraction of the pressure, opening his mouth about the one player nobody touches. Social media ignited instantly. Within hours, clips of Skeens' comments were everywhere. Fans were furious. Analysts were divided. And the legends, the men who built this sport with their own hands, they were not silent. Not even close. Derek Jeter does not speak often. That is what makes it so devastating when he does. The Hall of Famer, 5-time World Series champion, the man who defined what it means to wear a uniform with dignity, Jeter appeared on a nationally broadcast sports program and was asked directly about Skeens' comments. He paused. He smiled slightly. And then he said something so surgical, so perfectly delivered, that it became the #1 trending topic in the United States within 40 minutes. I think it's great that Paul shared his thoughts. Everyone is entitled to an opinion. Even people who haven't done it yet. That was it. 7 words at the end. Even people who haven't done it yet. The studio went silent for a full 2 seconds. The host laughed nervously. And the internet completely collapsed. That single sentence said everything. It acknowledged Skeens without attacking him. It honored Ohtani without mentioning his name. And it reminded every young player in baseball that legacy is earned, not announced. Fans immediately began breaking down the quote line by line. Jeter just ended a man's career with 1 sentence. This is the most polite destruction I have ever witnessed. He smiled while doing it. That's the most terrifying part. But Jeter wasn't finished. Because when pressed further, he opened up in a way that was far more revealing than the sarcasm. Here's what I will say seriously. I played this game for 20 years. I faced the best pitchers who ever lived. And in all that time, the one thing that was always true, the players who talked the most about what others couldn't do were always the ones most afraid of what those others could do. Shohei Ohtani doesn't need me to defend him. His at-bats defend him. His ERA defends him. What I would say to any young player making comments like that is simple: go do it first. Go pitch at that level. Go hit at that level. Go do both at the same time. And then come back and talk. Until then, the scoreboard is the only opinion that matters. The scoreboard is the only opinion that matters. By the end of the broadcast, that line had been quoted over 200,000 times. Derek Jeter had spoken. And the entire sport felt it. The same week that baseball was buzzing about Skeens and Jeter, something historic happened at Dodger Stadium. Freddie Freeman collected his 2,500th career hit. It was a moment 20 years in the making. A milestone that only the greatest hitters in the history of the sport ever reach. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. His teammates poured out of the dugout. And Freeman stood at first base with tears in his eyes. But what happened after the game is what became a second massive topic of conversation. Because in his post-game press conference, a reporter asked Freeman a routine question. Freddie, 2,500 hits. What does it mean to you? And Freeman answered it. Graciously, emotionally, beautifully. But then he paused. And unprompted, completely unprompted, he brought up Shohei Ohtani. I have to say something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I get to share a clubhouse with Shohei every single day. And I want people to understand something. What you see on the field is maybe 10% of who he is. This guy comes in earlier than anyone. He leaves later than anyone. On the days he's pitching, he is locked in like a machine, studying film, preparing his body, going through his routine. And then the next day, he's in the cage working on his swing like pitching doesn't even exist. I've played with great players my whole career. I played with guys who were 2-tool players, 3-tool players. But Shohei is operating in a dimension that the rest of us simply don't have access to. I think about my 2,500 hits tonight, and I feel proud. I worked hard for every single one of them. But I also think Shohei is going to do things that make every record we talk about today feel like a starting point. He makes me want to be better. Every single day. Just watching him work makes me want to come in earlier, study harder, compete more seriously. That's rare. That's a once-in-a-civilization kind of player. Once in a civilization. Not once in a generation. Not once in an era. Once in a civilization. The press conference room was completely silent when Freeman said it. And then every single reporter in that room began typing at the same time. By midnight, Freeman's quote was everywhere. Sports networks were replaying it on loop. Japanese media had translated it within the hour. Fans around the world were reposting it with one message over and over again. Freddie Freeman said what we all feel. Here is the beautiful irony of everything that happened this week. Paul Skeens made comments that were meant to explain Ohtani's psychological advantage over pitchers. And in doing so, he triggered a wave of responses from legends that did nothing but confirm exactly what he was saying. Derek Jeter, a man who faced pressure every single day for 20 years in the most scrutinized market in baseball, essentially told the world that Ohtani is untouchable. Freddie Freeman, in the middle of celebrating one of the greatest individual milestones of his own legendary career, chose to redirect the spotlight onto his teammate. Think about that for a moment. On the night of your 2,500th hit. Your night. Your milestone. Your 20 years of sacrifice and dedication and grinding through injuries and doubt and pressure. And the first thing you want to talk about is the greatness of the man standing in the next locker. That tells you everything. That tells you more than any statistic, any highlight, any home run distance measurement ever could. Shohei Ohtani doesn't just dominate box scores. He dominates the minds of the greatest players who ever lived. He makes Hall of Famers sharper with their words. He makes champions more humble with their praise. And he makes young pitchers everywhere realize, very quickly, that there are opinions you keep to yourself until you've earned the right to speak them. Baseball will remember this week for a long time. Not because of one game. Not because of one home run. But because in a single week, the sport showed us three things simultaneously. It showed us a young player learning the hardest lesson in sports, that greatness demands your silence until you can match it. It showed us a legend delivering the most elegant, devastating one-liner of the season. And it showed us a champion, on the greatest night of his personal career, choosing to spend his moment in the spotlight pointing at someone he believes is simply beyond all of us. Shohei Ohtani didn't play today. But somehow, he was the story anyway. He always is.